All right. Thank you so much for coming and listening to another episode of the Reawakened Mom podcast. I'm here with my friend Alicia Peterson Baskel. How are you today?
I'm great. So glad to be here.
I know. I can't wait. We finally are getting to talk.
I know.
I feel like it's been so long we've been trying to have this conversation.
Yes. Field trips get in the way, right?
Yes. Busy mom life, which is the best life, right?
Yes,
You're like, I
definitely.
cannot miss this. How was the field trip, by the way? Was it good?
It was so fun. Yeah, it was
Where'd
so
you guys
fun.
go? Where were you
We
going?
went to the Menge Museum at Balboa Park in San Diego. It's just been redone about a year ago, and it's so cool. So
Oh,
many cool
awesome.
artifacts. Yeah.
Oh, sweet. Well, and I live on the East Coast, so I'm like, I'm not sure what that is,
No,
but
that's
really
okay.
cool. I'll have to look it up. Awesome. All right. Before we dive in, let me just introduce you to my audience so they can get you to know you a little bit better. So Alicia is a dance artist, a creative writer, and mother. She teaches breathwork for creative entrepreneurs and hosts a podcast called Inside the Creative Process. So I would love to know, like, have you always been creative? Because you do all these things. Like when you were a kid, did you just kind of start that way and you could do all these different things? Or did that kind of happen later on in life?
No, it was, since I was a kid. I mean, I was always a dancer. That was kind of, that's been the through line of everything.
Yeah.
Always dancing in front of, any kind of reflective surface I could find at nighttime. The glass doors in the back of our house would, all of a sudden I could see my reflection when the lights, when it got dark, and I would dance in front of it and choreograph dances and writing. Writing was always fun, but I would never have considered myself like an artist.
Yeah.
Like that wasn't really what I considered myself until that kind of came later, where I could really step into like, oh yes, I'm an artist.
I'm an artist. Yeah. So do you have two daughters?
I do.
So are they
Yes.
dancers or are they artists
Yeah.
at this point in their lives? I know they're young, but
No, right. Yeah. Well, creativity is
yeah.
like coveted in our household. So yeah, anytime my older one, she's 10, she was always like drawn towards visual art, which is actually got me doing more visual art,
Yeah.
kind of going like, oh, wow, she's 3 and she believes that she can make a purse out of paper and tape. Like, so cool.
So
Okay, great.
cool.
And so that really encouraged me to kind of go like, well, I'm a dancer and I'm a writer, but hey, maybe I could make something else and hang it on my wall. So,
Yeah.
I mean, watching them be creative is such an inspiration. And
Yeah.
she's a dancer and she likes to improvise, which is, a big part of what I do now.
Okay.
But she's not as into dance. The younger one, I can see her being more a dancer, but be also more theater. she's much more dramatic.
Is she
And
dramatic? I was going to use that word.
yep, she likes when drama comes up, she's like, ooh, give me more, give me more.
Yes, this is my passion right here. I love it. Oh, and then you started a podcast. So like you can pretty much do it all. I'm like, goodness gracious. Like usually there's like something missing, but I'm like, wait, you're a writer and you're a dancer and you're an artist and you can do podcasting. Like you can do it all, girl.
Thank you. And I think the name of the podcast is Inside the Creative Process, which kind of gives you a clue of like what I'm obsessed with is being inside a creative process. So like making a dance, I'm just in heaven when I am going from, 0 to performance. All of that space in between making that dance, whether it's me, doing a solo or with a group of dancers, is my favorite. It's just my favorite place to be, or writing and then editing. Even like
Wow.
editing can be so creative, and it's just being in that zone, like,
Yeah.
that feeling when you're like,
Time stops. You're just like, it's like you could be there for 10 hours and you're like, I thought that was like a minute. Wait,
yeah,
what?
yeah. And these connections are made and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even make that happen. It just happened. And it's like magic. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind
That's
of an
so
obsession.
awesome. What kind of writer are you? So creative, like what kinds are you? Just to write stories, to write books, like poetry? Like what kind of writer are you?
Yeah, currently, like it's kind of a 2-part thing. Number one,
Okay.
I love to write dance, like about dance. And it usually comes out kind of poetic.
Okay.
Which is why I started the podcast, because I wanted to write about dance, and I never had the time to really like come home after a performance and write about it once I had kids, because I was just so tired. And then the next day you get up and you're doing all the things. So I could never quite write about it, but I love talking with artists about their process. So that sort of veered me into podcasting via writing.
Okay.
But I write picture books.
You do?
Uh-huh.
That's so awesome.
Yes. They're not published yet, because I've always kind of put that to the side, and I'm learning now that I don't want to be doing that, and saving that for, if I have time on Friday afternoon. No more of that. I've got to be, really scheduling it into my life a little bit more, especially since my girls are in elementary school. But I have written 3 picture books, and I'm in the querying phase where I'm reaching out to agents and or publishers about my book.
That's so cool. How did you get to that point? So this is like mom to mom, and like all the moms listening, like how did you get to that point? Or did you have a low point where you were like, wait a second, like, why am I putting this to the side? Or why am I waiting till the girls are like in college to like do this thing that I'm like amazing? And I think it's awesome and can really help other people too. How did you get to that point? Because as moms, I mean, we put ourselves last, or so many moms don't even know what things light them up because we're so busy with our kids and doing the kids things. But how did you get to that point to be like, wait a second, full stop. Like, I need to do this now. Like, I need to start doing these things.
Yeah. Really good question. Yeah. I mean, as I've said a few times, like I'm just obsessed with being in that process. So I recognize that process, that creative process of dance making was gone when I first had my now 10-year-old, because leaving the house to go to a dance studio was like, it's not going to happen. Like my heart can't even handle it, let alone my child. So that definitely took a back seat. And that was one moment when I went, okay, like I needed a creative process. And I knew that because that had been my career up until then. So that's when I first went back to writing, and I had taken classes along the way. And, even in my grad program for dance, I worked with the creative writing department with their grad students.
Wow.
So I was doing writing along the way. And especially if I had a class, I'm really great at finishing assignments, but when that class is over, I wouldn't, pick it up and keep writing. So I had this idea that I'd been developing before my kids were born. And then all of a sudden I was without a creative process. I was shopping at Christmas time, and all I wanted to do was buy these like board books everywhere. And before having Juliana, before having my oldest, I thought that this was like a middle grade novel. And then I realized, oh my gosh, this is not a middle grade novel. I keep getting stuck. I would keep getting stuck on things.
Yeah.
No, this is a picture book. It could be like so simplified and be made into a picture book. And so when she was really little and still, and taking all those naps all day long, like whatever they take, like 5 or something.
They take naps? Are you kidding? No, they do. What are you talking about? I'm just kidding.
Well, she would be in the swing. So, it wasn't anything. The swing had to rock her to sleep.
Yeah, that would keep her busy for a while.
Yeah. So like 20 minutes, seriously, I'd be like, okay, write down this idea. And I wrote it in verse because I don't know, something about that was enough structure for me to just get it done in 20 minutes. Like, okay, I need to rhyme with this, or okay, next time she takes a nap, I'm going to try to rhyme this thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I got it started, and it was pretty bad at that time. Like when I look back at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was terrible. But the story was out.
Yeah.
And so I had a few of these where the story was out, and over time, maybe when my second was in preschool and I'd have 20 minutes at a coffee shop or an hour, because you've got the drop off, and a 3-hour preschool time is not 3 hours.
It's like an hour. You're like, wait,
right. Right. There's the errands, there's the this, there's the that. So I'd work on it then. But again, it was just like my brain wasn't yet functioning enough to make it good. It
Yeah.
was just like
Get it
getting
out.
out there on
Yeah.
paper.
It's like brain
And
dumping it.
totally, totally. And it felt somewhat creative because it was like, oh, I guess it's going in this direction. But it wasn't until the pandemic when, I don't know about you, but I think a lot of us kind of went, okay, what am I doing with my life? Like,
Yeah.
what is life? What is this world? What would I regret most if something were to happen to me? And what said to myself, I would regret most is not getting these books finished and out into the world.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah.
That's like I'm like getting goosebumps. I'm like, that's so beautiful that you even thought to think that, you know what I mean? And had that realization. I just think that's beautiful. Are you doing all the artwork too, or are you having someone else do that?
I
Okay.
am not. And that's sort of something that, either you're a really great illustrator, then you go for it. Then you're an author illustrator. But if you're not, they don't want you to even find. And I'm talking about like the publishers.
Yeah.
They want to match you up with somebody because
Gotcha.
they have illustrators that they work with. Uh, so yeah, they'd match my text with an illustrator, which I haven't gotten there yet. And that's something that I'm so looking forward to because it's just been me and my words and
Yeah.
some writer friends who have read it and given me great feedback along the way. But yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah, you'll have to like read it or do like, a Zoom podcast episode so you can like, show your story and read it and read to classes virtually, whatever. I don't know.
Yes.
I used to be a school teacher, so I thought that was like the best thing. So I'm just like holding my book and, reading at the same time. That's going to be awesome. I can't wait for that to come out and come into be birthed into the world along with all your other stuff, because like I said, with the podcast and other things that you're doing too, it's a lot to manage. I'm sure, all the different things that you are doing. And now, I say now, but when did you really get into breath work? Like, did that happen during the pandemic? Was that before the pandemic? Was that like yesterday?
It was just a couple days ago, I
Days.
said, hey, this is my thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, that started right around, you've got kind of the timeline just right on. It started just a little bit before the pandemic. I was introduced to breath work. And I mean, really, I've been a meditator for 15 or 16 years
Okay.
fairly consistently. I would
Yeah.
say I fell off the wagon with my two girls for a little bit when they were first born. Fair enough, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I was a meditator for a very long time. And I think something that runs in the dance world a lot is that we value body work, including like cranial sacral work, Reiki, different energy work,
Okay.
and massage, but because it helps our bodies to be able to feel what's happening while we're moving and to be able to move, period.
Right. Right. It's pretty
So
important.
yeah, yeah. But I never wanted to teach any of those. For whatever reason, when I tried my first breathwork session over Zoom, I was hooked right away. I didn't know I wanted to teach it, but I did know that I felt everything that I'd ever felt in a cranial sacral session with a cranial sacral practitioner. And, in any kind of energy work, I was feeling on my own bedroom floor with the Zoom, like with a screen, and just performing this breath work for myself. And I
Wow.
went, wow, yeah, like,
That's so cool.
yeah,
What is breath work? I know what
yeah,
it is, but if people aren't sure what it is, can you kind of explain what breath work actually is and
yeah.
of the benefit, like maybe the benefit that you saw and how it helps others, especially moms when your kids are going crazy or you're about to lose it at dinner time because nobody wants to eat anything you made?
Yes, for sure. Yes. And there's a lot of different types of breath work. So I'll say that first and foremost, because there is, breathing techniques that you can bring into any moment, breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, breathe out for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts. That's a really useful tool when something is happening in the moment.
Yeah.
But the kind of breath work that I teach is more of a breathing active meditation. And so what it looks like, what a class would look like is you lie down and you do this breathing technique. It's 2 breaths in through your mouth and 1 breath out through your mouth. So you go breathe down into your belly and then up into your chest and then exhale out. And you're doing that same thing over and over and over and over for a while. It's extremely meditative. You're getting that oxygen into your bloodstream, which activates your hypothalamus and releases endorphins. So then your body is just able to release that stuck energy that we all have, right? We have it from our childhood. Maybe we have it from yesterday. Maybe we have it from looking for parking and, being frustrated with all. There's certain things that we just kind of hold in. Yeah. And this is that opportunity to let that out. Mm-hmm. And what I found is that the more I was able to clear some of that old held patterns out of me, out of my body, I would access creativity so quickly. Like I would have these like this clarity. This is what I'm going to work on next. Okay. This is the answer. This is the direction. This is who you need to talk to. It was just profound to me. And as a business owner and as a creative person, those things are really important. It's really important to be able to hear your intuition and to hear that clarity that you do have inside of you. You just, we block it so often,
And so that's all from breathing, like just a long period of time. I'm just like, how do you release the energy from breathing? Like, it just sounds like woo-woo, you know what I mean? I'm like, how is that possible that your body just releases just because you're doing this type of breath for an extended amount of time? How long is the breathing? You said a long time. Like, is it like, do you stop at 15 minutes? Is it like a half an hour? Is there a pre-work and then post-work, I'm assuming?
Everybody does it a little bit differently. The kind of breath work that I do and the way I like to practice it is really trusting in the breath, just really going there and not adding any extra stuff in there, but really trusting in the breath. So we usually breathe, if you take a class with me, we usually breathe 25 to 30 minutes. And then there's a resting, like you would in yoga, like a shavasana. And that's when the deep meditation really takes over. So, I mean, truly it's, as a meditator, as a person who meditates, has meditated for a really long time, that chatter that sometimes happens with meditation, it goes away with breath work because you're focused on breathing. You're focused on your breath. You might have some of that chatter while you're breathing, but because you've gotten so much movement of your energy in your body, by the time you're in Shavasana, you're like a whole new person.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah, it's incredible. And wow is a word I hear from people who are trying it for the first time when I, bring them back and say, okay, wiggle your fingers and bring yourself back to this present moment. And I will hear like, wow, I had no, you honestly can't quite know what you're going to feel until you're in it.
Yeah. So is this something that you practice? Like, can somebody do that on their own or practice? Is that like too much? Or do you say, okay, you recommend doing this like with someone who knows what they're doing, like you, until you kind of know what you're doing, just because you could have some kind of reaction or emotional reaction. You want to make sure it's like a safe space, or how does that work? Like a mom just wouldn't kind of do this on her own, right?
I think you could, you might want to, what I would recommend is, and what I do for myself is I practice it every day now at this moment. Nobody has to, that's not like, there's no universal, you need to do this X, Y, and Z, like this many days a week, like exercises, it's not that same kind of a thing because everybody is so different. But what I would recommend is that, yes, you take either a one-on-one with somebody who teaches breath work or go take a class, whether it's on Zoom or in person. If you find it hard to breathe into your belly, all the way down into your belly, then I would recommend you take that first class possibly in person or do a one-on-one. But once you've got that breathing, once you've had that experience, this is what's always fascinating to me, is the person holding space and witnessing does make a difference for me, at least. I practice it on my own most days, and then maybe every other week I take a class so that I am witnessed, because there's just something about somebody holding that space and witnessing me that makes it just more powerful.
Oh,
Can't
wow.
explain it. I can't explain it. I don't totally understand that part of it, but
Yeah.
yeah,
So you said something about it helping obviously entrepreneurs, or for you as
yeah,
like a businesswoman too, because then it helps with like clarity. How is this helpful, or something that could be beneficial for like moms too?
yeah.
Um, to use or to try, with help or on their own after they kind of have been through it before.
Yes. What I find is that between meditation and breath work, you're not necessarily going to do it in the moment, right? You're at dinner and you're angry and you might take a few breaths, like I said. But what we're trying to do with breath work, and if you create a regular practice, whether it is, like I said, like a couple of times, or once a week, once every 2 weeks, or every day on your own, or whatever your practice is, whatever you feel you need to do to keep that underlying base calm, that's what you're going to establish. And I think that's the biggest thing for moms that we need, is that underlying base calm where challenges come up, and it isn't that we're stuffing them down.
Mhm.
It's just that we're able to see more clearly through them, or uh, because things are going to come up. Like, we're not going to be able to necessarily change that. But if we can have a baseline of neutral, of calm, where we're not pulling at the triggers, we're not pulling at those things in our own history that, I don't know about you, but with my kids, before I had kids, I thought I was like the most calm, chill person. And then, right, I was like,
Yeah.
I don't need to work on myself. I'm fine. But like, my kids will pull on that very thing that's a challenge for me, and that I didn't realize was a challenge for me. And, I can point to them and be like, you, but really it's me, me, me. So if that's been processed, if I've worked on that part of me, if I'm at a baseline where that's not going to get triggered, oh my gosh, it's so much easier to deal with all of the things that come up.
Yeah. And so did you get to that point with breath work? Because I'm just thinking, if moms are listening, are they like, oh my God, like the breath work sounds like a miracle, like sign me up right now. Or did you also do, because you have a meditation practice as well, and you've done that for so many years. And so it was kind of built on and built on. And then once you became a mom, this was just one more thing that you could kind of add to your toolbox. Or had you done some other work and stuff too, to be able to be like, oh, this is actually me. It's a reflection of me and something I see in myself that maybe I want to, I haven't healed, or that I need to work on, and I'm seeing it in someone else, and therefore I need to work on it myself. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. I mean, I I definitely I'm lucky to have a broader perspective about parenthood, but I know that early on, I mean, there were so many things that I didn't realize that were given to me from my mom. And I didn't know that until until my mom died,
Okay.
and breath work, kind of that combination, because I started doing breath work after she passed away, and it helped me through my grief. And honestly, I do think that is where I have so many of my insights, is through
Wow.
breath work. And it's different from meditation. I did meditation for so long, but it felt like, and I'm doing for the listeners, like I'm kind of making like this gesture where it felt like it was just like a slow progression.
Yeah.
Whereas with breath work, I feel like I'm taking just dive right there. And people will say that. I've heard when I was in training, I would hear, the people coming to training, we'd all be excited to be there at training because we're going like, yeah, breath work. It gets you there. It gets you there so fast.
Yeah.
What is there? I don't exactly know. It's different for everyone, but it's like this direct route to your body, really, to the
Wow.
things that we have stored in our body, and then to the creativity that we have in our body.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I was going to say, is everyone in breathwork creative? But I'm just kidding. But
Well,
I mean, we are all creative
yeah,
in our own way. And if you think that you're not, or, I always thought like, I'm not a writer because I was comparing myself to how other people were writing. And it's like, well, that's just not my style. And if I'm uniquely me, then I am a writer the way that I write, not how maybe you're writing, like you're rhyming and doing all these amazing things. And it's like, yeah, that's just not my style. But I do believe we are all creative in our own way.
yeah. And that's one of the things that is emphasized when I went to my final training was with David Elliott, who is the person who kind of created this particular strand of breathwork. He didn't create it. He has, just brought it to more people. He's doing
Yeah.
the trainings and bringing it to more teachers. But I mean, his big thing was creativity. And I knew that, but I didn't know that until I was there at that training where he was just, he was just pulling the creativity out of everybody. What's your thing? You have this idea. Well, you need to do that. And I mean, he was all about doing the creative things and finishing them, getting my book published and somebody selling their artwork, because there is that process of creativity that because of, again, back to my obsession with the creative process, that like where you're making and making and making, I could edit forever and it would never see the light of day. The words would never be seen by anybody but me. And I would still be kind of happy,
Yeah.
but to really complete that process and to really, let the energy of that creativity really flow, it needs to get out into the world,
Mm-hmm.
so whether it's a dance that I'm making that I just like the rehearsal process, no, it needs to be seen by an audience. A book needs to be read.
Well, it's
Um,
very vulnerable. I mean, it's vulnerable to do that, with art or your dance or your writing. I mean, putting a podcast out, like it's all like
totally.
very vulnerable of being like, what if people don't like it? Like, this is me, or like people judging, or they would have done a different, like whatever our thoughts are, it's safe to like keep it like hidden, and like you put it out there, which is great. But then it's like, but now what? Like now other people need to benefit and see it. And that's like really vulnerable and can be very hard.
Yeah, I agree. And it can be some of the biggest growth anybody can have. Like the
Mm-hmm.
podcast thing, exactly what you said. It was easy for me to make dances and be in front of people. I'd done that for a long time. Even writing and having people read my writing was something I could do, that was fine. But asking somebody to be on my podcast and then having a conversation with them and then putting it out into the world, that was one of the biggest growth experiences that I've had.
Wow. Did your podcast come from doing breath work, or had you already thought about doing it? Was it like, you need to get this out there, or was that something you wanted to do? Because you're like, I want to talk about all these other people and what their creative process is.
Yeah, I wanted to do the podcast was an idea that I'd had for a long time because I wanted to either I want one of my biggest desires is that more people understand the inner workings of the art process. So more people go and see work.
Yeah.
I'm a contemporary dance artist and our audiences are just smaller than say the Nutcracker. And we're used to that. That's just the way it is. But in my mind, I'm like, well, if people just understood like how I feel about this, and if they could just see it from the inside, I think that would be so beneficial to the audience members. So I've had that idea for a long time. I just, I thought, oh, it's another creative project. It's just
Yeah.
another creative project and until I really buckled down and did it. But the breath work helped me to do that.
Yeah.
Doing the breath work and doing that. I actually was going through my training to be a teacher of breath work alongside starting the podcast. And I don't think that was an accident. It felt very much like that leap of starting my podcast was supported by breath work. And in fact, I would, in the mornings before doing my interviews, would make sure that I had time to do like a good breath work session so that I could be centered and, ready to listen and ask the questions and
Yeah, just
be in
like
that space.
receive, you know what I mean? Like I would assume, because I have a friend here that does breath work as well. I haven't taken a session or done a session or had a one-on-one or taken any of her classes or yours. Just heard about it, but it sounds too, just like it is very like therapeutic and cleansing, but then leaves you open to being able to receive and be clear minded before an interview, on just focusing on that conversation and how to have the best conversation and really listening to them. So then, how to reciprocate like back and forth too.
Yeah. Yeah. And today I didn't have the opportunity to do the breath work because something broke. But I realized as I was in that kind of space of trying to fix what I was trying to fix, that like, oh, I don't actually need it the way I needed it a year ago, because I do have that baseline, because I have been practicing daily, every other day or daily for at least, a year, I think. And so
Yeah.
I feel that baseline of calm, and I don't have any of, I really don't have any of that nervousness that I had before.
That's awesome. Yeah. And just for moms too. I mean, just that calm state is so important. So to be able to have that, and you have a 10-year-old and then
And a
7?
7-year-old. Yeah.
7.
Both
Okay. So
girls.
10 and 7. Yeah. I mean, any age could be, a challenging age, especially if they know how to like pick your buttons or like push your buttons. But just to be able to be like, yeah, well, I feel calm and I'm going to ignore that, or it doesn't bother me, or, it's really not about me, or they had a bad day or something happened at school. It's really it has nothing to do with them. It's really something broke in the house and I'm frustrated because I have to pay this money for it. And so I'm taking it out, on the children. A lot of the time that can be what it is. It's like, that's the last straw, to everything else kind of piled up on top of each other. So having that breath work and that awareness, and maybe that clarity of those things can really help, help moms out too.
Yeah, I really think it's helped me very much. I mean, my girls, unfortunately, I wish it could just like seep into them. I'm like waiting for it to like really just, but they're in that phase where they're arguing. They will pick each other's buttons, and my more dramatic one kind of enjoys that.
Yeah.
She's getting a little something out of it. And so sometimes I just have to step back or say to the older one, like, let's leave the situation. And because I can't control it.
Yeah. No, you never will. And I have a 16 and a 13 and then a 29-year-old stepson. It's like, you don't control it. Like, it's a farce to be like, oh, that you can, because you really can't control it. You can really only control yourself and your choices and what you're choosing to do and how you're choosing to react in the situation. But yeah, we have no control really per se over our children and how they're going to act. It's just, okay, how are we going to react to this? What's my best decision I can make in this moment right now? What tool can I use? And keep your fingers crossed. Pray it was the right decision. I don't know. Who knows? You know what I mean? We're just all trying to figure it out. And, I was like, it's like, you think you're so calm and you're going to be this for me anyway, I was going to be this angelic mom. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, whew. Every day, my buttons get pushed.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Oh, awesome. Is there anything that you haven't shared that you kind of feel is like on your heart to share with the mamas that are listening today?
Yes. Yeah, I do. One that period that we sort of were talking, we skipped from, writing when she was in the swing, and then writing at preschool, and then finally having the opportunity to really do the thing that I'd been wanting to do for a long time. I think that happens to more moms than, you know, than we say. That feeling of wanting, of ambition, that feeling of some kind of ambition or some kind of calling, whether it's, something to be creative or a business idea or just a little time to think, that you
Yeah.
don't have. And I just, I think one of the things I'd love to be able to tell myself back then is just to be patient, and that's okay. That
Mhm.
it's okay that your ambition will be fulfilled, that you will have the opportunity, and that you don't need that same 8-hour time span that you used to have, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
that we once had, that we can figure out how to do it in the cracks. And we really have to, figure out how to let our brains explore and think. And over time, there'll be more and more time,
Yeah, I
right?
love that because it is. There's so many different seasons, and maybe it isn't the right time in that moment, but like write it down. Like, don't ever forget about it or think, oh, well, I'm never going to do this, or I'm too old, or I'm too young, or I have too many kids, or whatever it is. Maybe you are too busy right in this moment, or you're in a season where you have littles, and it's like, like you just did it while she's in the swing. It's like, okay, yeah, you don't need like 10 hours a day or 3 hours of uninterrupted time. If you have those pockets of time and it's something you really want to do, you can work on it in those chunks. And then
Yeah.
eventually, when the timing is right, like you said, then that thing that is beautiful, or that passion that you used to have, or this idea or ideas, it can come to life and when it's supposed to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And even if those chunks of time don't work, like if your brain just can't function, just let yourself be patient, right? Just be patient with yourself, and find the time when it is time, because it's hard work being a parent, and it's hard work being a mom.
Yeah. Well, and not comparing yourself to others. So you might see somebody
Yeah.
else doing all these things and they have the same age kids as you. And you're like, well, why can't I do that? And then you're trying to force it. And you don't really need to do that because your journey is your own, and nobody has the same journey as you. Even if you see it on social media, and you think it is, it really, no two journeys are the same. So I love that. Be patient. That's a great message.
Yes, and I do that with social media, not all the time, but I remember looking at somebody's day and being like, "How does she do that? How does
Yeah.
she?" Like, I just want to follow her around and understand.
Yeah.
Like, how
Please.
long are you spending at that park and at this? Like, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they didn't show that when she went home and was like crying, herself to sleep, or in the shower, or like locking herself in the bathroom when she got home because she was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, like, I don't know how I just did that. Like, I can't do that another day. Like, there's so much, there's two sides of social media, and we only see the one.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to compare, and you aren't even going there to compare. You're going to like send a message to you, Alicia, make sure we're in the right time zone. And then all of a sudden you're like 10 minutes later, like, what am I
Yeah.
even doing here? So yeah, I just think, setting that example for your daughters too, of just like, hey, be patient and know yourself, is such a great message too, because we don't have to force and always hustle. And it has to be done right now. It's like, yeah, but maybe not. And just being okay with that is a great little way to like put a little cherry on the top. Because it is, because it's so easy to just push and always want to do more, versus kind of stepping back a little bit too, and just being like, okay, like what if I didn't push? Like what if I
Yeah.
didn't? What if I just was like here, and here was okay?
Yeah. Yeah. And our bodies know, like you can feel that feeling in your body of like, okay, when I'm not pushing, and then maybe there's just one thing that's going to do it, where you think you have to do all these things. Maybe there's just one thing. And if you just listened to yourself and did that one thing, you'd be satisfied. And whatever it is that you're going after, you're that much closer, that much faster.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, I love that. All right. I always end
Right.
with this last question because
Okay.
we do not celebrate ourselves enough as women. That is my opinion. I think it could be a fact. I think that could be like a fact. But what is something that you love about yourself right now, Alicia?
Aw, that is a nice question. I love the way my body feels. I love the way I feel when I'm sitting. I love the way I feel when I'm moving. I just love the way my body feels on the inside. It just feels so loving. Yeah.
Mm, that's so good. What a good answer. I'll take that one. I'll take that answer. That will now be my answer. I'm going to manifest that into my life. I love that. Awesome. Well, I know people are going to try and find you on social media or wherever. So how can people find you and follow you and all the things?
Yeah. Alicia Peterson Baskel is my like name everywhere. So if you find me on Instagram, I'm on Instagram a lot. And that's also where you can find, I do usually 2 to 3 breathwork group sessions over Zoom
Okay.
every month, like on a Saturday morning. I try to make it, they're all a little bit different times. So you'll find all that information on my Instagram.
Awesome. I'll make sure I have that in the show notes so people can find you.
Okay. Yeah. And my podcast is kind of on a hiatus at the moment, but
Okay.
should be or could at the start of the year, there should be new episodes, but your listeners could also check out any of those past episodes if you're interested in the arts. And some of my uh, guests are moms, and it's really interesting to hear how they handle like having a creative artistic career and being moms. And they're all so genuine and down to earth. So it's great. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll make sure we show that because this will come out. This episode will come out next year. So it's perfect.
Okay, good.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and just being so raw and open with everything that you are doing and learning along your journey.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Oh, awesome. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.